Hi everyone, my name is Ryan Hodges. I'm the safety officer here at Thrust Flight. Thrust Flight has been looking into ways that we can hopefully focus on prevention and proactiveness regarding air proximity. So today we're going to be going over a couple of different tips and techniques y'all can use whether you're the instructor or student on board while practicing. While this video is primarily about safety of flight, it's also going to allow y'all to confidently navigate your airspace. Whether that be talking to ATC, talking to other traffic, maintaining awareness of the airspace. I can confidently say if you follow all the tips and techniques in this video and apply them to your flights, you will be a safer pilot and you will be a more confident pilot in and around your airspace. Now, our first scenario I'd like to discuss is clearances, primarily takeoff and landing clearances. So let's say you're at a really busy airport, such as Addison or any of the other practice areas in the DFW Metroplex. And you've been given an immediate takeoff clearance to take off before faster jet traffic. Now there's a couple of different things, both as the student and the instructor, that you want to keep in mind. Let's say you're a student on a solo. You're already under the stress of being in the plane by yourself. Maybe you only have 2 or 3 hours of solo time, and now you've just been given a very fast clearance and you have to make a fast reaction. Now, in this case scenario, it's really important to practice proper ADM and make the decision that we need to in order to maintain safety of flight. So, with that in mind, it's always okay to deny a clearance in these cases. If you feel like you're a little bit rushed or you feel pressured to accept a clearance, just deny it, wait a couple of seconds for that traffic to land, and then take off shortly after in a safe manner. Now, if you're an instructor on board, there's a couple of things to keep in mind separately. Let's say you have a student on board and y'all are trying to practice performance takeoffs. So if you do something, for instance, a short field takeoff where you have to have a delay on the runway, in that case, as the instructor on board, you should make sure your student denies the takeoff clearance and y'all wait for the proper time to do that takeoff. Even if you aren't doing a short field takeoff though, let's say you're doing a soft field takeoff. If your student is under a lot of pressure, maybe they're doing a stage check or a checking event and they're already feeling a little bit nervous, and now you force them to do a very fast takeoff, that might bring up unnecessary errors that we don't want our students to have. So in these cases, it's important for the instructor to practice their ADM and make sure that they're doing everything they can to keep their student in a comfortable setting. Now, even if it isn't a performance takeoff, maybe it's just a normal takeoff, for whatever reasons, let's say you're not done with your checklists yet, you're just surprised by the call, you thought someone else was in front of you for takeoff, really anything. It's always to remember that these takeoff clearances are, at the end of the day, optional for us. We can always deny them if we need a little bit more time before taking off. This doesn't just apply to takeoffs though, it also applies to landings. Let's say you're beginning a landing clearance and there's an aircraft that is on the runway still, they're rolling out, and you just don't feel really comfortable with that. It's always okay to go around, deny the landing clearance, and then just try again later. Sometimes there's instances where you might be landing behind traffic and the tower has told you, hey, the separation is good, although it doesn't really look good in the air. They're seeing one perspective from the tower, and then you're in the cockpit behind that traffic, you're probably seeing something a little bit more accurate. So in a scenario like that, it's really important for us to make the decision in the plane and not let tower make that decision for us. If we feel like we don't have enough space, you have to make the final say on that. The main thing to remember is that no matter the clearance, if it's a takeoff or a landing clearance, always make the final say as the PIC whether or not to accept that. The go-arounds are always okay. Waiting in line for takeoff, always okay. It might cause a little bit of frustration for you since you have to wait, or for tower since they have to resequence you, but at the end of the day, safety is paramount. It's much more important than having to wait a couple seconds. So the next scenario we're going to be talking about is, let's say you are out in the practice area and you're doing maneuvers with your instructor, or maybe you're solo and you're doing maneuvers. So maybe you're doing turns around a point and there is an aircraft that you see on your MFD or visually that you haven't been talking to. Now let's say you try to talk to them, they don't respond, and that separation is getting a little bit too close for comfort, and then you have to maybe break off of the maneuver, get out of the area, and it becomes, again, a little too close for comfort. Now in situations like these, there's a couple of different techniques that we can use in order to make that whole situation a little bit less stressful for us. So the first technique you want to do was mentioned earlier, and it is visual contact. This is going to be the first and most paramount technique we can use while doing maneuvering or really just avoiding any traffic at all. The key with this is once you make visual contact, maintain visual contact. You don't want to just see them, say, oh, they're fine, and then look away and focus on what you're doing in the plane again. You want to keep an eye out for them just in case they start doing something that you didn't anticipate, especially if you're not communicating with that traffic. That being said, the second technique that we can use is communication, right? We should always be making calls, position reports, letting people know what we're doing and when we're doing it in the practice area wherever you're doing your maneuvers at, whether that be in airports or otherwise. Now, with that in mind, that doesn't mean the other aircraft are always going to be monitoring or talking on that frequency, which can sometimes be a little bit frustrating for us because we are and they're not listening, right? So with that in mind, there's a couple different things you can do in order to try and establish communication with them. One thing you can do is check other frequencies nearby. Maybe they are on a CTAF for a nearby airport that they haven't switched off of yet, and they're still talking to that frequency on accident. If that's the case, we can always check different frequencies, maybe one CTAF here, another CTAF here, just making sure that we're kind of covering all of our bases, especially if you're going to be maneuvering around that area for a while. Another thing we can do is check common frequencies. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 is one that a lot of people use just while maneuvering or, flying for fun, and they don't necessarily want to monitor anything. So in that case, contacting on that, totally fine. Now, the final thing that we can do in this case, let's say we have tried everything. We have visual contact of the traffic. We're maintaining that visual contact. We tried contacting them on a couple of different frequencies, but we don't get any response. Well, in this case, again, maintain that visual contact, and it's really important for us to maintain situational awareness throughout. So let's say we're doing a maneuver, a turnaround a point, a ground reference maneuver, something like that. And we're practicing it while maintaining visual contact and awareness of that traffic, and all of a sudden, they turn right into us. In this scenario, it's really important for us to follow our 91-113 right-of-way rules. So always pass off to the right of traffic, and always allow the faster moving traffic to have right-of-way in that case. Let's say you are coming head-on, and you turn to the right, and they turn to the right, and then it becomes one of those situations where you're not 100% sure what they're doing, but you know what they should be doing. Continue to follow 91-113. And if you need to, you can always climb away, change your altitude in order to increase separation in that case. Sometimes it can be really easy for us to assume that they're going to give way to you. Really, both pilots should be giving way, especially in a head-on converging type of scenario like that. So in conclusion with this scenario, really the 4 main topics that we want to maintain while flying out in the practice area doing maneuvers. 1, always make visual contact with traffic if you can and you're aware of them. 2, communication is key. Make sure you're making your position calls and attempting to make contact with them, maybe on the frequency that you're using or other frequencies around that area. 3, situational awareness, maintaining that while you're doing your maneuvers, while you're practicing whatever you're practicing. And 4, making sure to always follow that 91-113 right-of-way rule. All right, the final scenario for today. Let's say you are returning to your home airport to land. You've contacted the tower and they're kind of leading you in. They give you a traffic call at your 1 o'clock in about 3 miles, traffic at your same altitude that you should be aware of and maintain separation with. You hear this call, you look outside, you see an aircraft, you're like, all right, sweet, I found the traffic. You say traffic in sight, you start looking elsewhere to land, right? Now let's say a couple of seconds later, you get another traffic call from ATC saying that they're now 1 mile of separation, same altitude still, and then they tell you to fly a left heading of 270 immediately. One of those situations where they're trying to create that separation for you. You think, well, what did I do wrong? I had the traffic in sight, they weren't a factor, right? And then you realize you were actually looking at traffic further beyond the actual traffic you were looking for. So in cases like these, where you hear one call, you think you see the traffic, and then you realize that's not the right traffic. This is very common in really busy areas. Let's say you're practicing out of an airport that has 6, 7 people in the pattern at a time most days. Areas like this where there's a lot of traffic and it's very easy to see one and think you see the right one that you're trying to look for. So the technique that we can use here in order to avoid situations like this is to, again, once you make visual contact, maintain visual contact. Not only do you want to maintain visual contact, you want to maintain situational awareness of the scenario and of the area in your head. Knowing where traffic is in the traffic pattern, knowing where they're going to be momentarily, knowing your order in the traffic pattern. All these things are really important for us to kind of think about and track as we continue to land. Now, another thing we can do in order to hopefully maintain a little bit more awareness of that area is not only maintain visual contact with that traffic, but also cross-check it with your other instruments. If you have an MFD, using your ADS-B in to hopefully see that traffic on the MFD, kind of connecting the dots visually with what you're seeing, can really help maintain that awareness of the traffic and make sure that you're seeing the right people. Because a lot of times, maybe your MFD is showing one thing, visually you're seeing another thing. That can kind of clue you into, oh, maybe I'm seeing something wrong. Let me continue scanning the area. Always important to cross-check with your MFD or whatever you can cross-check with. Really, at the end of the day, just because you have said traffic in sight doesn't mean that you're done with the traffic, right? A lot of times we take that for granted. We'll say traffic in sight, and then we'll continue to do what we do because we think it's fine. ATC is doing their best with what they have to maintain that separation for you. But these calls are really made so that you, as the PIC, can visually maintain the separation first. ATC might not expect that traffic to do something, maybe like a left turn straight into you or whatever they might do. So it's really important for us visually to maintain that separation and not really rely on ATC too heavily for that. It's really nice to have them because they help a lot with that separation and giving you these calls that will help your awareness. But at the end of the day, separation comes down to us in the plane. ATC isn't flying the plane for us. So now that we've gone over these three different scenarios, you might be able to find a couple of underlying factors that are paramount in all three. So let's talk about those. We have three primary things you want to keep in mind in order to avoid air proximity incidents. The first one is confidence, and that's really your confidence as PIC, whether that be a takeoff clearance, a landing clearance, really anything when it comes to being in the plane. You are the say-so. It's not ATC, it's not your instructor, it's not your student, it's you as the PIC that's making the final decision. So with that being said, again, it's all up to you. These clearances are optional. Do what you need to do in order to maintain safety of your flight. The second thing is going to be awareness. Now, this is really important because it's going to be the main thing that keeps you out of those really sticky situations where that separation is lost. So, a couple things with this: visual contact, maintaining that, cross-checking it with your instruments. Another thing, just because you make a call to ATC doesn't mean your awareness goes away. You're always thinking about the traffic pattern. You're always thinking about the airspace. You're doing best to safely navigate your way through that airspace. The third thing is going to be communication. Now, this is making position calls in the traffic pattern. This is making position calls maybe in the maneuvering area that you practice in. This is also trying to establish communication with other aircraft, whether that's calling them out by tail number, asking them what their intentions are, checking different frequencies that they might be monitoring in your area. Really, it's whatever you can do to maintain communication with you and everybody else in the airspace around you. That concludes today's video. I hope y'all took away something from this that'll hopefully make your flight safer. Thank you guys so much for watching today, and I will see y'all for the next one.
All right, that's a wrap. Yeah, that's a wrap. Good job, man.
Sweet. Should I tell them like, comment, and subscribe?
Do you think they'll do it?
I think so. Hopefully.